Thanks. Last Count Corlo Taoiseach, I was grimly amused by you accusing others of ideological obsessions in the earlier question, because surely the ideological obsession that's most evident is the obsession of Fianna Fáil and Fine Gael to privatise everything that moves, whether it's public land to private developers for housing, or the issue I want to raise, public service broadcasting. It's about a year now since a scandal erupted in RTE which centred on the behaviour of a tiny group of people at the top of that organisation, whether presenters or people running the organisation, of malgovernance and of obscene salaries. Now, what is the net result of that scandal, of the bad behaviour and excessive pay to a tiny group of people? We learn is the outsourcing and privatisation of the two flagship programmes of RTE, Fair City and The Late Late Show, and hundreds of jobs to be lost of ordinary workers who had no hand or part in the malgovernance or the obscene salaries enjoyed by a few at the top. The people who are going to lose out are the technical workers, the costume workers, the makeup workers, staging, editing, camera, scripting, floor managers, people on modest salaries, many of them having to fight for years even to get proper contracts, some of them still only on temporary contracts. These are the people who are going to lose their jobs, outsourced to the private sector, particularly ironic considering that it was the corrosive influence of the commercial sector on shows like The Late Late Show that led people to think they should be paid these obscene salaries in the first place, or that produced things like the barter accounts over business deals with the private sector. And the consequence we're now facing is the whole thing, lock, stock and barrel, is going to be handed over to the commercial for-profit sector, a sector characterised by poor working conditions, lack of pension entitlements, employment insecurity, and the workers believe, quite honestly, they're just stringing along the people in Fair City, and that this will actually be the beginning of the end of Fair City, in reality. So privatisation, the net result of bad behaviour. What you should have done, and what you should still do, is stop this privatising, stop the axing of job losses, and fund public service broadcasting properly by imposing a tax on the profits of people like the social media companies, the ICT companies, instead of a regressive and failing TV licence funding model, which is completely inadequate. So will you intervene in this to protect the jobs of ordinary workers and to safeguard the future of public service broadcasting for our society?
First of all, Deputy, I just want to make it very clear that there's a fundamental difference between outsourcing and privatisation. Fianna Fáil, by the way, has a very strong record historically of building up state enterprises, and did so through various decades, particularly during the Sean Lemass era and so forth. And RT is not for sale. I don't think there's any proposal to put RT on the market or on the stock exchange. Now, that is privatisation, let's be clear. I mean, you're like Don Quixote tilting at windmills here. There is no privatisation. It's not going to be sold. It's not on the market. And what I would say is the following, that, and again, the Minister and the Government has been clear that it doesn't want mandatory redundancies. It will, RT have committed to this, that it will seek voluntary redundancies. And in terms of public funding has increased, and the Government is and will make a decision in respect of the future funding of RTE into the future, which has always been part RTE licence fee, part exchequer funding and part commercial revenue. And RTE have always taken in commercial revenues for many, many decades, and you know that, Deputy, and that's been a feature of the model. And RTE has outsourced. It is now proposing in its latest strategy to increase the level of content produced by the independent production sector, and that was signalled in the strategic vision document which the broadcaster published last November. And secondly, it had already been recommended by the Future Media Commission, which was established to consider the significant challenges facing the wider broadcasting and media sector in light of increasing globalised competition, and to make recommendations so we could continue to have a sustainable public sector broadcaster and public service content. So if you take TG Ceathair, for example, which I think has been a very innovative state-owned company, it uses that model quite extensively. It sources almost its entire schedule from the independent sector. And so I think we need a balance, although I do accept the need for in-house talent to be developed within RTE itself. I do accept that principle. In terms of the skill sets and making sure people have continuing professional development, people are retrained and so on like that. All of that is provided for within the RTE strategy itself, because it does commit to increasing the amount of RTE content, for example, that is produced outside of Dublin, which is important and which I welcome in terms of new proposals for Cork and indeed other cities and areas across the country. Now, in the end of the day, RTE has to manage its affairs. I don't think the operational management of RTE can be undertaken by the Oireachtas, or indeed by government for that matter. What government does have to do is look at the overall strategic framework in terms of policy, but also in terms of funding. And government will be making its decision on that in the next number of weeks.
Deputy Boyd Barrett.
Right, so the government washes their hands. See, the government is responsible for not reining in the excessive, the obscene salaries that everybody knew about at the top of RTE, whether it was executives or a tiny number of overpaid presenters. But now the people who are getting it in the neck are precisely the skilled people, the ordinary workers. They're the ones who are going to lose their jobs, and they are going to go into an independent private sector which is characterised by the gig economy, by project to project. I don't know how many times I've raised the insecurity that workers face in the rest of the audiovisual sector. The producers do very well, but the workers don't know if they have a job from one project to another. So we're going to go from a situation where people have decent, relatively secure jobs, although not all of them, because they had to fight and campaign against bogus self-employment and contract work. What will happen to those contractors? Will they get redundancy? No, they won't. Will they get any guarantee to be passed on to these programmes? No, they won't. Fair City, the flagship programmes, Late Show will now become more reliant on the private advertisers, on the commercial sector, undermining the fundamental ethos of public service broadcasting. And it won't stop at 400 jobs, because many of those people are ancillary workers who work both in Fair City and work in other areas of RTE. Their jobs will be under threat as well. Will you intervene to protect public service broadcasting, decent jobs for the workers there, and make sure they're not the victims, and fund this thing properly by taxing the social media companies who do need taxes on their obscene profits?
Social media companies employ thousands in this country as well, and your general taxation proposals would, I think, reduce foreign direct investment to this country to zero if you got into a position where you would tax the living daylights out of companies generally, which is your policy. Fair enough, you're entitled to your political, ideological perspective. No, I don't. No. Sorry, again, I didn't interrupt Deputy, and I'm talking to Deputy Boyd Barrett, who's the leader for this morning. You might be leader next week, but today it's Deputy Boyd Barrett. And I just want to make the point that it has been long-standing policy, by the way, to support the independent sector. Now, you may be against that. You may be against the idea of innovation within the protection. No, sorry. It's always been a view that we support the independent sector. No, I believe in a strong public service broadcaster. I also believe in public service broadcasting and content. And into the future, it will not just be the public service broadcaster, but we should support public service content through a variety of schemes in the print sector and in local radio and other national stations where there is genuine public service content, because that's important for democracy. I mean, we've had the Sound and Vision scheme, which has been long-standing there now, which is funded through the TV licence receipts, and we have new schemes are coming on board to support local democracy, court reporting. That's recommended by the Future Media Commission. So there's potential here, Deputy, to do the right thing, to sustain employment and decent quality of life and employment for people as well. Sorry, Deputy.